Shabbat Shalom, sweetest friends. So, we have a special Shabbos known as Shabbos haGadol. This week's Parsha is Parshat Tzav, and it is the Shabbat before Pesach. As such, we celebrate a special Shabbos called Shabbos haGadol. But what's the deal? Why are we doing it? So, this is a very odd and perplexing custom, if I may say, because it's not denoted by any specific date on the calendar, right? We are commemorating a week, right? Every Jewish holiday is generally off of a day. It is the 15th day of Nisan. It is the 14th or 15th day of Adar, right? It's always based off of the month. But here we have something based off of a week, and a very arbitrary time too. It should be in reference to another day. So it's a day that's based off of another day, the Shabbat before a day, whenever that comes. So where does such a custom come from, and why was it chosen to be like this? I'm not exactly sure that I have all the answers to that, but I did want to pose that as a very fundamental question as to what we're doing. And we see that it's not essentially such a strong Shabbat in terms of its biblical commandment. It's not on the level of, we should say, Parshat Tzav, where we have to listen to the reading of a Malek. But it is on a level that the rabbis decided to institute, although it is perplexing because, after all, what are the customs that they came up with? Came up with ideas of you should read part of the Haggadah around Mincha time, that you should hear a big drasha by the rabbi, that maybe something like he should give the halachot of Pesach, or maybe that he should give the halachot, or he should give an inspirational talk about Pesach. And so as such, everybody knows the rabbi's got a good an hour and a half speech prepared. And so we try to engage this, try to commemorate it in such a way. So what is it commemorating? So this commemoration has to do with 4 days before the Jews were ready to leave Egypt. 4 days. So the Exodus was on a Thursday. The Karban Pesach was slaughtered and eaten on Wednesday night. And 4 days before that was Shabbat. It was the 10th of Nisan. And they tied an animal, a lamb, a sheep, to their bedpost. And as such, they were enacting a form of rebellion, pledging an allegiance to Hashem. And their bravery is what we are commemorating. Or is it? So if we look at it, what are we doing? We're saying it's Shabbat haGadol. So I was discussing with my mother last night, and it's called Shabbat haGadol, not Shabbat haGdolah. So we are using the masculine. If we were commemorating Shabbat itself, that this was maybe a wonderful Shabbos that they were, or that it was about the day itself, so we would say haGadolah because Shabbat is feminine. If it was about Am Yisrael, so Am Yisrael are the chosen people, and these, as such, they are the bride of Hashem, and they also would have denoted a feminine. So who's the masculine that we are commemorating? God. God is the one and only that we are commemorating on this special Shabbos. So what did God do? What was so special about what God did? Well, the Jews, they took the they took the Karban, they tied it to their bedpost, and you can imagine that was a very odd thing at the time. So the taskmasters, the non-Jewish slave owners, they came up to them and said, "What are you doing?" And the Jews very brazenly answered back, "We are tying this here for 4 days so that we may slaughter your God on Wednesday, and upon which there will be a plague on the firstborns of Egypt, whereafter we will be free." You can imagine that this stirred a lot of heated emotion inside of the Egyptians, and that heated emotion took its way all the way to Pharaoh's house. How so? Well, they saw that 9 plagues came before that, and they were terrified. They didn't want to die. And so they went to their fathers. They said, "Fathers, stop this, release the Jews." And they wouldn't do it because they were beholden to Pharaoh. So they went over to the Pharaoh's palace, and they stormed the palace. They had a revolt. And that revolt, they were begging Pharaoh, let them go, and Pharaoh wouldn't let them go. And so there was a war. A civil war broke out. The firstborns against the army of Pharaoh. So that's quite an amazing thing to commemorate the civil war of another nation. And what other time do we have on our Jewish calendar where we are going to commemorate the actions of a bunch of non-Jews? So commemorating such an incident seems very, very peculiar. Why would we commemorate some firstborn Egyptians fighting the firstborn royalty in the palace? And not to mention, it would be one thing if they were victorious, and that led to the freedom of the Jews. But it didn't. Pharaoh won. So now that he won, and we're literally back to square one. What are we going to do? And the time passes, and finally we get the Korban Pesach on Wednesday night. So a very interesting act indeed to commemorate. One, it would be maybe commemorating the actions of non-Jews, and two, it's really commemorating a failure, because what did they do? Okay, so it wasn't necessarily a failure. After all, what did I say happened as soon as the Jews told their taskmasters, we're tying this, your God, to the bedpost, and we're going to offer it as a sacrifice on Wednesday? So the heated emotion of wanting to just kill them. They wanted to kill them. They wanted to do away with them. Why would what held back the Egyptian? There's nothing else that could hold them back except for God. So some commentators come down and say that they wanted to, they were enraged. They were just grinding their teeth, and they were caught because that's all they could do. They could only grind their teeth. Other commentators bring down that they got themselves up in a rebellion of sorts. They formed. They wanted to do a pogrom essentially, and that stopped. And since that was prevented, by which there's an accounting of them as they approach a Jew, they fall on their stomachs and they clinch themselves, and there's a whole bunch of their insides basically get torn up. Some of them die, some of them don't. Anyone who came close to a Jew to want to harm them. So that came about and manifested in a way that caused them to either die or fall sick. So there was no harm that came to the Jews. So again, it reminds me though of a question the Beis Yosef asks. So why are we commemorating one day? What's the deal with commemorating this one day? If they were really not attacking Jews up until the Korban Pesach, I imagine they felt a great deal of anguish, distress. They were pained by the Jews doing this to their idol, to their God. So it was really like 4 days or something, right? So what happens if we were to make a connection, let's say to Hanukkah, for instance? So there was a miracle. The oil lasted, but it kept on lasting. So we don't just commemorate the first day of Hanukkah. We keep on commemorating all the days. And so similarly, we should be commemorating, if it's really all about the non-Jews not attacking us, so we should be commemorating all the days leading up. But we don't. We just commemorate this one day. So how did this one day come about? So we could think that, listen, this happened on the 10th of Nisan, so let's commemorate every 10th of Nisan. But something else significant happened on the 10th of Nisan. You know what it is? It is the death of Miriam. Miriam died on the 10th of Nisan. And as such, there was an adequate memorializing, an adequate remembrance or fasting that was needed to be done in order to pay allegiance to such a great prophetess of the Jews. So some people have a custom on the 7th of Adar, which is Moshe's death, to fast. And the same thing, some people have a custom. It's written down in Megillas Tanis that we fast on the 10th of Nisan. So there's going to be a clash. If we're going to commemorate this great and awesome day that Hashem did for us on the 10th of Nisan, so that celebration is going to overshadow the morning of the death of Miriam. So Chazal, at the time that people were observing the fasts of this Megillas Tanis, all these fasts of the year, so Chazal pushed or made a distinction between what we do. They said this happened on Shabbat anyways, why don't we just commemorate the Shabbat before? As such, this will free up the 10th of Nisan to be able to make an adequate commemoration for Miriam. But I still leave you the question as to what is really going on. What are we doing commemorating this special Shabbos haGadol, what is it coming to signify? And why was that date exactly chosen? Why are we choosing a Shabbos? Why aren't we choosing a day of the regular calendar year? And I'd love to hear your responses. So with that, have a good Shabbos and a good discussion too.